an honor
to lift our voice and sing
to the living God. No one can deny that Jesus Christ
is the Most High. Let's go.
A new sermon series. The new sermon series is called I Am, and it's focused on us learning the name of God and the many names of God throughout the Bible. As I told you a week ago, as we finished the last sermon series, which was about faith, one of the key points of discussion that kept coming up time and time again was this thing around intimacy with God, being in a relationship with God, being close to God, and being able to hear from God. And as I began to study for the last series, God began to say clearly to me, how can you be intimate with someone that you don't even know that person's name? And he asked me the question, he said, how many people do you have intimate relationships with that you consider to be close to you, that you consider to love you, people that you trust, people that you can depend on, whom name you don't know? It's a good question, right? And then God began to show me. He said, you know what? In the United States of America and the movie industry has given us more information on the names of Greek gods than on our own God. And then he said to me, he said, you can even give me the name of the devil. You know Lucifer, you know Satan, you even know the names of the devil and can't even give me my own name. Can't even call me by my own name. And as I began to wrestle with that, it became clear that we're going to spend probably the next 10, 11 weeks going through the Bible from beginning to end. Last week, for those of you who were not here last week, we started in the end. We started with what Jesus calls God. Because our goal every day we wake up is to be more and more like Jesus Christ. That is what we're after, right? And so we need to understand exactly what he calls God. And we talked last weekend. And the name that Jesus gives to God is what?
Abba Father.
And as we talked last week, I challenge all of you that were here to kind of think through three questions. Three questions that impact the relationship between you and your earthly father, or that earthly person that's standing in the gap for your father, maybe a mother, in some situations, maybe an uncle. And I gave you three questions that I wanted you to kind of think about this week. Because these three questions, I told you last week, impact the ability of you to be able to see God the Father as your Abba Father. The first question was, do you see me? The second question was, do you want me? And the third question was, do I make you proud? And what I explained last week is, if you were to ask yourself those three questions, how do you reflect on those questions and the answer to those questions when you think about your biological father, that would help you to understand the relationship that you can have and will have with our Father. I was looking through the channels, and I came across one of my favorite movies, and don't judge me, but I think that maybe a few of you may have heard of it. The movie's called Drumline with Nick Cannon, the former husband of Mariah Carey. And I began to watch that movie, and I can see it from a different light. There's a scene in the beginning of that movie, I don't know if you guys remember it or not, where he's kind of like casing out this dude at the train station. And the line dies down, and he walks up to the front, and he drops an invitation in to his graduation. And the guy says, who are you? Why are you dropping this in here? And he said, my name's Devin. I'm your son. He basically said those three things. He says, you never came to see me. You Do you see me, Dad? No. You never came to take care of me. Do you want me, Dad? No. But I want to give you this to let you know that I made it. Are you proud of me, Dad? And as I began to watch the movie and the development of this character, and I would just say, go back and watch. It was very interesting and very good artistic film work. Because this guy, Devin, carries all the ills that each and every one of us carry throughout this movie when these three questions are no. Do you see me? He has trouble with his image. They want him to cut off his hair, but he identifies with his hair. This is what makes people see me. And see, many of us, when we're broken in this place, when we feel like our biological parent, whether it be our mother, our father, whether it's an uncle, it could be a husband, it could be somebody that you needed to see you, but didn't see you. And what we tend to do in those instances, just like Devin does in the movie, is we try to do things to be seen. Sometimes we get a little wild out in public, so our friends will see us. And then the other end of the spectrum is sometimes we shy away from being seen at all because we don't want the rejection of not being seen. So we hide ourselves. We hide behind everything and anything just so no one will even see or even notice that we exist. But at the end of the day, we're constantly tormented by the rejection of people not being able to see us even though we're here.
That's good.
He instantly wants to be a part of a group. He instantly finds some girl who is going to be very hard for him to want him. It's an older girl. He instantly wants to be on the lead of the drum line. He wants to be wanted. But Dad didn't want it. And so often when we're going through life and we have been hurt in this way and we want to be wanted, we will compromise. Lord have mercy. We'll compromise ourselves and what we believe in. We'll allow some people in close to us that have no business being close to us because we just want to be wanted. We'll dive into that fraternity, into that sorority. We'll dive into all types of stuff and all types of places. We'll turn to even games. You know, we have young men that turn to games. We have young ladies that turn to sexual promiscuity.
Amen.
We practice that word. And I still messed it up. That's a word I don't want in my vocabulary. But our young ladies who are hurt and are broken and don't feel wanted, they give themselves away, they compromise themselves just so somebody can say, I want you, even if it's just for a few minutes. Now you gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
There's even a scene where he's playing and he can't even read the music, but he's playing, and it's over with, and he throws something else in, and he said, what was that? He said, oh, that's just a little something. But what he's trying to do is, he's trying to make the people around him proud. Trying to show out. And so much of those things that we say drive us, so much of the stuff that we run after, so much of the stuff that we buy, the clothes that we wear, so much of the problems that we have at work with people who don't even bother us is because we're striving to make somebody that proud. We want to be out front. We want folk to be praising us. And when they don't praise us, we get hurt. Dad didn't praise us. If you can identify with that in any way, if you can look over your life and reflect on the decisions that you have made in the past and the decisions that you are making currently, and you can see any of these three questions showing up in your life, I want to introduce you to the first name we get for God in the Bible. The name is Elohim. It stands for strong God. He's all-powerful God. He's able to do anything. He can fix any of those three questions that you have that are broken. He can fix any wound that is the result of those three questions. He can fix bad decisions that you made because of those three questions. He can create you again. He can recreate you. Amen. Elohim. Everybody say that with me. Elohim.
Elohim.
So what I want to do is, I want you to be able to fully tap into the power of Elohim. So in order for us to be able to tap into the full power of Elohim, in order for us to fix those three questions, the one question, the two question, the third question, or all three of them in some instances, and maybe two or three more that I didn't capture, it's going to require you understanding the nature and the power of Elohim. Let's start from the beginning in Genesis. I'm going to read a little bit of scripture here. We'll talk about it at the same time. So we'll start in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. He's a God of all power. He transcends everything. He was here before heaven was created and before earth was created. He was here before the Big Bang.
My God.
He was here before any of that science. Matter of fact, I was explaining to Angelo that science is not reality, it's theory. It's man's best guess at what God has already done. That's why it's not 100% accurate. That's why every once in a while people scratch their head and say, I have no idea how she made it through that surgery. We thought she was dead. I have no idea how they were able to survive that incident in their marriage. I have no idea how she able to raise those kids and get them all through college. It doesn't make scientific sense to me. The power and ability that God has within that situation. And so what we start out with is understanding that Elohim is the God of the impossible. Yes. Let me tell somebody here today that's struggling with one of these three questions and you feel that you are at a place in your life where you cannot change, where you cannot fix the things that have happened, that you cannot repair, the relationships that are so important to you. Let me tell you about Elohim. He is a God that has power to create when there is nothing that exists. He starts with absolutely nothing and creates everything. He creates not only this universe, the Milky Way, which is one of the smallest universes, but 400 million years away there are universes in every direction, and God created every last one of them.
Amen.
He has all power in his hand. He has the ability to rule and super rule over every situation in your life. Don't you give up on anything. I don't care how impossible things may seem. Elohim is capable of fixing it. We go on to the next verse and we see in verse 2 it says, the earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the water. The Spirit of Elohim, the Holy Spirit is what we call him in the church, was hovering over the water. Then Elohim said, let there be light. And guess what? There was light. Yes. Look at these words that I have highlighted here. Formless, empty, darkness. Have you been in that place in your life? Have you ever been in that place in your life when you felt like things were just formless and things were just empty? Have you ever been in that place in your marriage when you looked at the person across from you and you began to question the future with that person and the future with that family? Have you ever been in that place in school school when the one class that you just couldn't get over?
Come on, sir.
The one class that stood in the way of your destiny, in the way of you getting that degree, and you stand there and you feel helpless and you feel empty and you feel like you are covered with what? Darkness.
That ain't gonna be.
What Moses tells us is, in the midst of all that darkness and all that emptiness and all that voidness and all that hurt and all that pain, it's the Spirit of the Lord hovering over you. You know, it felt dark and you felt alone and you felt empty. But I want you to know, when you're in that place in your life, God is closer to you than He's ever been. He stands with you. He stands beside you. He hovers over you in darkness. And in due time, He will bring light to you. He will bring light to your life, to your situation. He'll bring light on your job, to your children. He'll bring light in your marriage. God will come in. And He will make things right in your life. Yep. What we see here is that Elohim is present in your darkness. When you look around and things seem at their worst, when you look to the left and look to the right, as I said earlier, and you don't see anybody, know that God is hovering over you. He's just waiting on you to acknowledge Him and call Him in, because then He can do a miraculous thing in your life. He can bring light in places that were dark, places that you never thought light could shine. He can completely change your situation. So, Elohim hovers over this darkness and this empty place. So there's water all the way up and water all the way down. And some of the commentators refer to it as almost like a swampland. Just empty. And He begins to do some things, starting in verse 6. He separates the water that's in the atmosphere from the water that's covering the surface of the earth. He makes the sky. Wow, by just saying it. And then in verse 9, it says, then Elohim said, let the water under the sky come together in one area, and let the dry land appear. And because He said it, so it was. And then it says, Elohim named the dry land earth, the water which came together He named sea. Elohim saw that it was good. And I don't know about you, but I've had some swampy times in my life. I've had some times when things were as chaotic as they can be. I could not figure out left from right, up from down. I did not know which direction to go or who to call on or what to do. I did not think that I would make it. There have been some times in my life, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, when I've lost somebody so close to me that I did not believe that I could ever get past the feeling of that loss. There have been some times in my life where these three questions, do you see me? Do you want me? Do you love me? Made me feel like I was trapped in a swampland and nothing was there to sustain me. But what we do learn from this verse and from these verses 6 through 9 is that Elohim brings order to chaos. Doesn't matter what's going on in your life and how many things you're having to juggle and and where you got to be when you leave here, and where you're coming from, and all the things at work that you got to get done, and the kids, and the wife, and the husband, and all those things that seem to be so chaotic that you just feel like you can't wrap your hand around. You just feel like you can't do anything right? You feel like everything. You're just not able to master anything. And what we learn is that Elohim has power, and his power is to bring order to chaos. He's able to separate. Now, if he can separate the sky water from the water on the earth, and then the water on the earth from the land, and get rid of swamps, what can he do in your marriage? What can he do in your education? What can he do with your children? What can he do in your community?
That's good.
Let's keep reading. Jump down to verse 28 now. There's a lot that goes on between verse 9 and verse 28. But the primary emphasis of what's happening is God is creating a sustaining life force. He creates the plants and the grass, the trees. But he didn't just create them for one day, right? He creates them so that they can live forever, because within inside of each one of those things he creates, the plants, the trees, the grass, are the seeds that they need to regenerate themselves. Mm-hmm. He creates the animals of the air, the fowl of the air, and he gives them the ability to recreate themselves. He creates everything that's in the water. And he gives it what? The ability to recreate itself. And then he creates everything on land, and he gives it the ability to recreate itself. And not before he finishes creating everything that you and I need in order to survive does he create us. Before we were created, collard greens were created. Before
My
we
God.
were created, ribs were created.
Won't he
Before
do
we
it?
were created, fish sandwiches were created.
Yeah, God.
Before we were
I felt that
created,
in my-
fried chicken was created.
Hallelujah.
He created all this stuff for us.
He's so great.
And then check this out. And then he put it on a pattern by which it will constantly create and provide for you for the rest of your life. You don't have to do nothing but stay out the way. Don't eat the fish. Don't kill all the birds. You can have birds to come. No, with the golden goose. Don't kill the goose. Enjoy the eggs. Verse 28 says, Elohim blessed them and said, be fertile, increase in number, fill the earth, and be its master. I got to say this, because this has been a landmark week. We've seen some changes within our society and marriage. And it is very difficult for me to read the Genesis account of how God created and sustained us through this whole pattern. The pattern is for the grass to produce its own seeds and sustain itself. For the birds, male and female birds, to interact with each other and sustain themselves. The same is in the ocean, and the same is for us. The pattern by which God has created us and will sustain us is through heterosexual marriage. He says, be fertile, increase in number, fill the earth, and be its master. You have power over the earth. It says, rule the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that crawl on the earth. You have power over everything that God created. It says, Elohim said, I have given you every plant with seeds on the face of the earth, and every tree that has fruit with seeds. This will be your food. And what we learn from Elohim and the nature of Elohim is that Elohim is a provider. He is a provider. And you don't have to ask me, just get to the point where you need something and see who shows up. I've been to the place where I was in great need, and although folks showed up, they clearly said, I don't know why I'm here. I just know that I'm supposed to be giving you this. Now, this is not enough to get you to where you got to go, but it'll get you to the next person. And sure enough, when I got to the next leg, there was somebody waiting there to get me to the next person. And eventually, Elohim, the provider, got me there. Now, this provision is so much bigger than what you're going to eat and what you're going to wear. And do you know, for those 3 hurts, for those 3 questions, wherever there's pain in your life, that God is here and waiting to provide you the encouragement that you need to get through it. That he's ready and willing to heal. See, listen, Band-Aids won't work on deep wounds. You got to have the spirit of Elohim. And he wants to provide a cure for you. He wants to care for you. He wants to give you everything you need to get through this situation that's in your life right now. The very thing that you're wrestling with and struggling with and trying to figure out how you're going to get through, Elohim wants to provide for you. Going over in chapter 2, it says, in verse 2, it says, by the 7th day, God completed his work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work that he has done. And we learned something very, 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 very interesting about the nature of Elohim. Elohim is a God of rest. He is a God of rest. And we are people who can't rest. And I'm convinced that we have trouble resting because of these 3 questions that have caused great brokenness inside of us. Because we're out trying to be seen, because we're out trying to be wanted, because we're out trying to prove that we should be somebody that people should be proud of. We work all weekend and we're out at all different kind of places because we feel the hurt from these 3 questions from somebody who we loved. And I'm just as guilty as this is everybody else. We believe parenting is making our kids overscheduled. You can't fix these wounds by overscheduling your kids, and can't do it. You can't fix these wounds by anything else except for the power of Elohim. And one of the ways that you can tell if you're sure enough in his power, if you're sure enough living by what he's called you to live by, is whether or not you can rest. Listen, any place that there's no rest, any place where there's no peace, is a place where God is not present. He is a God of rest, and he is a God of peace. And if you're having trouble making a decision and you're struggling with something and you can't get no rest or no peace on it, I can tell you right now, you are going in the wrong direction. God is a God of rest. You've got to do your job. You've got to work 6 days. You've got to go out and do the things that God has called you to do. But on the 7th day, you need to have 1 day in which you rest. Now, science has proven this because science has shown us that you can't farm the same land more than 6 years at a time. On the 7th year, you have to let it rest in order for it to reproduce the nutrients and the things that it needs to bring forth a crop. Scientists thought that they found something, but the answer to that was always in the Bible. And listen, in your relationships, whether it be with your families or at work, listen, you have to rest. I've worked with people trying so hard to fix these three things that they won't even take vacation time. They give it back. I don't want any rest. I don't want to rest. I don't want a vacation. In the place where God is a place of rest for you in every relationship, in every job. And the place where God is a place for peace for you. And we got to get to that place quickly. Yeah. So, and we've talked about the nature of Elohim. We have an idea of what that name means and what that name tells us about God. But I just want to point out a few things for you. I want you to be able to really tap into the power, because in order for you to overcome what you felt last week when we talked about this and what you felt when we started talking about it today, it's going to require for you to have the power that exists within that nature of Elohim. Verse 26 tells us a very important thing. It says, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the livestock, all the earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. You got to get this, guys. You got to get this. This is so important, because we leave so much power on the table because we do not understand this one thing, and that is you are created in the image of Elohim. He created you in his own image. Now look at this. First of all, the first thing we have to understand, and the reason why we can't tap into it, is because we don't understand that we are created in the same triune image as God. Look at how he refers to himself. It's God in the singular right here, but he says, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. That's Trinity, right? He says, let us. And what he's referring to is the triune nature of God. God exists in spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Father, and the Son. Right. Amen. And see, the problem with us making any real change in our life, getting over any of these three questions, is that we do not address them in a triune way. We don't address them as if we were created as three in one. And each one of us are three in one. You are a mind, a spirit, and a physical body. And anytime you try to make a change and you don't incorporate all three of those things, it's going to be short-lived at best. You may say something in your mind, but if you don't believe it in your spirit, your physical body ain't going to do it long. And you can try and take on a new habit in your physical body and try and get up early or do something. Let me tell you something. If your mind tells you that you don't need to be up that early, whatever your spirit and your physical body tell you, you will lay in that bed and sleep. And see, so many of our change that we try to fix these issues, we're just focusing on one thing when we should be focusing on all three every time. We have to understand that we are made in the image of God. And you cannot change anything in your life, not for a long time, unless you address all three things. I heard Tony Evans talking about this plane crash, but what happened was, as the pilot got out of the plane, he accidentally hit the ignition, and the plane started to take off. And he ran it down, but he couldn't stop it. The plane literally went down the runway and took off. Nobody flying it. And the plane flew for 90 miles in the air until it ran out of gas. And then it came crashing down. And what that story said to me is you can do anything for a little while, but unless you got all three of those areas covered in your life, it's just a matter of time before you run out of gas and come crashing down to the earth. It takes you understanding your real nature in order for you to make a lasting change. And you are made in the image of Elohim, the triune God. Now let's look at this for a second, because I want you to understand this, because you got great power. If you can control these three areas of your life, your mind, your spirit, and your physical body, you got a tremendous amount of power. Because you are created in the image of Elohim, the first thing you need to know is that you are perfectly created. So any of that stuff that anybody told you a long time ago or a short time ago, any of that stuff anybody called you, any names, any nicknames that people gave you that stuck with you, that you hate, any of that stuff that people use to try to pull you down and say that you are not sufficient for the job or not good enough for the marriage or not good enough to be a parent, any of that stuff that society has made you second guess about yourself, you need to understand that you were created in the image of Elohim. You were created perfectly. Doesn't get no better than you. You're the real thing. You're the best thing that God ever created. You are created in his own likeness and in his own image. The second thing that you need to understand is that you have power over both time and circumstance. God says he determines when the beginning is. He determines how much will get done on each day. He determines when it's finished. He determines when to rest. Stop being controlled by time and make time under your control. Stop being controlled by the circumstances in your life and the things that are happening around you, and understand that you have power through Elohim to control both time and circumstance. Because you're created in the image of Elohim, you have power in your words. How many times did it say Elohim picked up a hammer or a shovel? How many times did it say he crunk up a caterpillar or got on a lawnmower? He spoke it. He speaks in the affirmative. He lives in the now. See, we live too much in the past, and we live too much in the future, and we don't spend enough time in the present, enjoying the now in our lives, enjoying the goodness of God. There's power in the now. There's power in the present. There's power in Elohim. And because you were created in the image of Elohim, you have everything you need. Everything you need. There's nothing out of your control. There's nothing that you don't have power over in your environment. You have everything you need to be the mother or the father, to be the sister or the brother, to be the employee, to be the musician, to be the minister. You have everything that you need. It's all within your grasp because you were made in the image and you have the power of Elohim. The final thing that you need to understand is that you can overcome anything. Going back to those three questions. Doesn't matter who hurt you, who did not see you, who did not want you, who was not proud of you. You know, one of the amazing things about the Drumline movie is Devin figures it out. He cuts his hair, right? He gives in to that wanting to be seen thing. You know, he's given an opportunity to go to another team, but they want him to compromise. And he says, no way. He becomes okay with not being on anybody's team and not competing and not trying to make anybody proud, but he wants to do the right thing. Each one of us, we have Elohim power to recreate ourselves. We can recreate our minds. We can recreate our spirits. We can recreate and take control over this flesh. We can change. We can become the people that God created us to be. We can make a difference. Not just at home and not just at work, but in this world. We can change this entire world. All we have to do is tap into Elohim. So this week, I want you to just think about this and ponder on this thought. I can overcome anything because I am made in the image of Elohim. To Elohim be the glory.
Here we stand in the presence of our Savior.
It's an honor
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
to the living God.
to the living God.
No one can
No
deny
one can deny
that Jesus
that
Christ
Jesus Christ